Hello, my name is Kayla Gilly, and today we are going to go through how to deal with change and how to kind of adapt and, I like to say, adapt and overcome. So this is going to be based off of the book that we read, which is called Our Iceberg is Melting, dealing with some penguins and dealing with their iceberg melting and the ability to adapt to that, even though it's not something that they're really comfortable with or that they've ever really dealt with in the first place. So getting into this, our iceberg is melting. I first decided to kind of dig into some key points from this book and what some big key takeaways were for me. First key point of we must remain neutral in our opinions on the world, people, and situations because change is the only constant. Over time, even if you look at just between generations or just you as a person and how you grow throughout your life, the only thing that is constant is change. And so when this change is occurring, we have to be open to new ideas and new things that we might not have thought of in the first place, and just new things in general. And so I think it is really key to remain neutral in our opinions, so that way we're able to receive opinions from others and give opinions ourselves. The next bullet point, people will be hesitant to accept new information as it goes against what they already think. Human beings do not enjoy being wrong. I don't know about you, but I know for a fact that I don't enjoy being wrong. And I will tend to be pretty stubborn and I will be very stuck on what I believe is right. And I don't enjoy trying to find evidence against my initial beliefs and my values and stuff like that. So people are going to be hesitant to accept new information. It gets a little difficult. Next, our ability to make a change or difference starts with our ability to seek new information. We can only make change and seek out new things if we're open to the idea of change. And it kind of starts with us and our ability to seek evidence or information that goes against what we initially believe. Change does not happen fast or easy. Change happens very slowly. This is not something that happens overnight. Certain things obviously can, but for the most part, big change does not happen very fast. And then lastly, how information is presented has a huge impact on how people will receive it. Be diligent and know your audience. When you're presenting information, you must be adapting that to what they would receive and how they would take in that information. So you're going to have to alter how you present information to different crowds. So the first thing I kind of want to dive in, a kind of skill that stuck out to me with this book was problem solving. I teach this at my job, and it's just something that I think will help kind of wrap your idea around how maybe we could make that change and how that starts with us as a person. So to me, problem solving is problem understanding. You cannot accurately solve a problem unless you truly understand what it is, what's going on. It's kind of the why behind that problem. And we must have mental agility when it comes to problems that arise, especially complex ones. Simple problems, we don't need to have that flexible, accurate, and thorough thinking. I mean, we do, but it's not as important as when we have those complex problems. So these are just two aspects underlying problem solving. You must first understand that problem before you can even take any movement or progression towards fixing it. So, when looking at problem solving, there's a big idea concept that goes behind it, and that is the confirmation bias. So we tend to see what our mind initially believes. When we go into a situation, we have those values, those beliefs already deep rooted into us because of our life experiences and stuff we've learned over our entire life. And so when we go into situations, we tend to see what we already believe. So if we have an opinion on a certain group of people, we tend to believe what we tend to see what we already believe. And over time, those beliefs can be very hard to change. It can be really hard to change our mind as well. So when it comes to this, it's a very natural thing. People do it without even noticing or realizing it. And so we just have to be aware of this when it comes to problem solving, is that we have that confirmation bias, and when we're looking for solutions about things, we need to be aware of that and be able to use that mental agility to kind of get around that. So, what is the confirmation bias, and what does it cause us to do? So we like to look at this as a Velcro and Teflon. So, like Velcro, like growing up, you probably had Velcro on your shoes, and it was a little tough to unstick that. So those are things that are going to stay with us in that we're going to notice them, we're going to remember them, and we're going to weigh them. So this is the evidence that supports our thoughts and our beliefs. It's stuff we already believe, and all of that information is going to stick to us. We're going to remember it a lot more than information that is on the other side, which is that Teflon effect. So we're not going to notice, we're not going to remember, and we're not going to weigh that information as strongly as the stuff that supports our beliefs. So a key point to this is that these are happening at the same time. So when a situation arises or someone comes into our lives and we have initial beliefs or values about that situation or that person, we're going to notice, remember, and weigh stuff that supports our thoughts and beliefs. And at the same time that's happening, we're not going to notice, we're not going to remember, and we're not going to weigh some other information the same as the stuff that sticks to us. So this is what the confirmation bias causes us to do. It's just a kind of a visual to kind of get an idea of what that actually looks like. So how does the confirmation bias actually work? So if there's an ambiguous event or ambiguous information that is coming to us in our lives, we tend to interpret that to support our initial thoughts and beliefs. We take that ambiguous information, that ambiguous event, and we just kind of piece the puzzle together in our own minds, and it's going to typically align with our initial thoughts and beliefs. How else does it work? We do not seek evidence that counters our beliefs. No one really sits down and says, hey, alright, I believe this is my confirmation bias about a certain thing, and I'm going to look at evidence that goes against that. No one really does that. It's not natural. It's not a typical human tendency. And so, being aware of the confirmation bias, it's going to allow us to seek that evidence and stuff that might counter our initial beliefs. How else does it work? We weigh evidence for our thoughts and against our thoughts very differently. So if I have a situation with a person that I'm not too fond of, I'm a leader in the army, so I'm in a leadership position, and if I have a soldier that keeps showing up late to drill, I'm probably going to, and they show up late one more time, but they have a valid reason this time, but I already have this confirmation bias about them. I'm probably going to weigh the evidence of them consistently showing up late over the new evidence that hasn't been even presented to me. So we weigh that evidence for our thoughts and against our thoughts very differently. And then lastly, we stop gathering evidence once we find information that supports our thoughts and beliefs. So I know I've done this when I go on Google, when I have maybe a research paper or something along the lines of that. When I go on Google and I start finding stuff and I start gathering stuff that supports my thoughts and my beliefs, I tend to just stick to articles that already support it, and I just think that's a normal thing for people to do. They stop gathering evidence once they think that, hey, I'm right, so why would I keep looking? It's a human tendency once again, and everyone does this. It's not like one person is above the confirmation bias compared to other people. And so now that we know kind of how the confirmation bias works, we're going to look into how to fight that confirmation bias. So there's 3 different ways that you can fight that confirmation bias. You can write it down on paper to distance your thoughts. So this works in the way of you take that information that you have in your head and you have all these thoughts running around in your head, and you're going to take it out of your head and you're going to put it on paper. And you're going to look at that paper and you might even read it out loud. And it's just going to it's going to allow your brain to separate those thoughts going on in your head, and it's going to put it on that paper so that you can look at it from kind of a different perspective. Another way that you can fight the confirmation bias is you're going to ask fair and neutral questions to gather evidence. So you're going to ask, it's important to remain fair and neutral because you don't want to necessarily have leading questions to push for certain answers to come out of it. You want very accurate and thorough information that is going to come from gathering that evidence. And then lastly, consult with an unbiased opinion. This is really key. I use this one particularly with myself. I will go to a friend who I know is very neutral and they don't really have a strong opinion about the person or the situation, and I'll consult with them and be like, hey, this is what's going on. Am I reacting correctly? Could I be doing things better? Stuff like that. So just consulting with that unbiased person, someone who's not going to just fire you up and amp you up, someone who's going to maybe make you think about the events and the person and the situation that is going on. So, just to wrap it up real quick, some conclusion points. We must fight the confirmation bias to be able to accurately think. We must look for evidence for and against our thoughts and beliefs to remain neutral. Problem solving is problem understanding. You can't solve a problem unless you truly understand what the underlying issues are and what's really going on here. And then lastly, mental agility is key to dealing with change. I noticed this in the book. Fred, the lead penguin, he had strong mental agility. He said, "Hey, we live on this iceberg, and it's always been this way, and everyone else here thinks that." But he went and he gathered that evidence. He went and had accurate and thorough thinking, and then he took all of that information and put it into a way that everyone else could understand and potentially want that change as well. So that is all.